reminded me, he said, when Beau was 6, he came up and said, Daddy, can I learn to play drums? I want to be a drummer. How about you play piano? Because he didn't
Amazing.
want the drums. He was
In
like,
the house.
so I was 6 and I took Royal Conservatory. Then at age 13, when I discovered sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I stupidly quit conservatory. And
Oi!
yeah, to this day I regret it because I was like on my way to taking my exam so I could have my teacher certificate. Then once I quit, I learned to play guitar, saxophone, bass, and I toured with bands. And you know, right out of high school, I was in a successful band, and I learned so much about the other aspects of music. And so I'm glad the conservatory didn't, ruin it for me in some
Exactly.
weird.
Well, again, if your path was not to get your certificate at that time, of course, PS, you could always get it. I'm just saying. But
You're right. You're right.
it informed who you are as a human. Just learning the music for 7 years almost of you playing the piano, you write music, you write musicals, you can play anything. Like when I did that little randomness, you could hear where that was. I too wish that I had been able to, and I will, to take some conservatory music and be better at my life.
You should, and I recommend it to everyone and anyone. Me being able to read music is just like I just feel again so blessed. I've worked hard at it, but and I realize the more I read, it's like, wow, this really comes natural to me.
When did you realize that this could be a viable career option for you?
I lived with a lady that she was in a Fellini movie and she had a theater company in Toronto. So she hired me as assistant stage manager. And it
Wow.
was Tennessee Williams, The Rose Tattoo. I was the goat wrangler because they had a live goat. So my job was to bring the goat on stage, side stage, take her off. Shaniqua, I named her Shaniqua.
As one does.
And built a little pen, a little stable for her at my friend's apartment. I'd sneak Shaniqua to the theater. Like I'd be down Portland and King with a goat on the street. And that was my first theater gig, like being paid, being in the theater. And then I moved to Peterborough, quit my reggae band, came to
I'm
Peterborough.
sorry. You had a reggae band as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in a band called One. It was a rock reggae band, and they had a big hit called
Oh my
"Wide
god.
Load, Oversized Load." That girl, she's a little bit hefty. That girl, she's a little bit chunky. It was supposed to be an anti-obesity song, but it was like a big dance hall reggae hit. And then was in Peterborough, and while I was in Peterborough, a theater producer had heard about me, and I got a call from him, and he said, "Can I meet you tomorrow? Meet me at this bar." And I meet him. He slides a script across the table, and it was called "Freedom for All." And I knew right then he needs a black actor to play a slave in chains. It was about the Underground Railroad, and he couldn't find an actor of color in Peterborough.
Oy.
I had never acted, and he asked me to audition, and I pulled the greatest Denzel Washington circa Glory and Morgan Freeman. I did my best impression because I'm a cinephile. I love movies.
Me too.
That's where I got a lot of my acting experience, is just imitating the greats. And so I did that. I got the gig, and we toured that show to schools for years.
Wow.
And then time went by, and I was a bit disillusioned with the message hitting the kids. The kids not really being affected by Black History Month, and so I wrote my own play.
And what
Actually,
play was it?
it was called "From Here to Africaville." This play was about a kid, Dewey Dixon, that did community service at the time when Africaville was really thriving. Africaville, historically, is the first desecrated Black community in Canada. It was the first sign of urban renewal. They just took about 800 to 1,200 Black people and relocated them to Uniacke Square, another slum area in Halifax. he learned about George Dixon, who was the first African Canadian bantamweight boxer. And I, as the playwright, wrote the play with as my own journey, my own excuse to do research on whether I was related to George Dixon.
Oh, wow.
And I toured that play, started my own theater company. And I realized writing that play, and that play got a lot of mileage because it was about racism, it was about bullying, it was about athleticism, it was about boxing, it was about this, so kids of all ages, of all ethnic background,
Can
all
identify.
diversities can relate.
Hmm.
And then one play led to, I was commissioned to write another one, and then I wrote another one, and
And what
would
was that
take it.
called?
The second one I wrote was called Once a Flame. It was about Marie Joseph Angelique, an African Canadian slave woman that was executed for burning down 1/10 of Montreal in 1734. She was hung without really revealing what happened, without confessing.
Hmm.
Marie Joseph Angelique, that was the first sign of slavery, because she went to court. It was documented, so we
Right.
have this first sign of we have evidence. With all of these plays, I learned more about myself, my own African lineage, where I'm from. That's what really launched my career as a playwright, is my desire to know where I came from.
Hmm.
The more I wrote, the more I understood, or the more I was understanding about the human race, about humanity, about equity.
I'm so grateful to you for doing this research, this history, so you can find these uniquely Canadian stories, which are often overlooked because we have the American experience who beating us over the head with their stories, and so we think, especially as Canadians, that we don't have the same kind of shadeism, colorism, racism, uh, classism. We have them here in Canada, and we often think we do not. We
Yeah,
often think that we have already graduated,
yeah.
and not that I'm not trying to diminish our efforts
Hmm.
and our the people that are striving to make the world better in Canada for people of color.
Yeah.
Um, However, we still have places to go to get there.
Yes.
And if we don't look at our history, which again, I find that Canadians, myself included, don't really know much of our history, we are doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
That is the truth of the matter. So I really am grateful that you have taken the time and the interest in using your artistic and creative skills to bring that to light, because I think that we really need it. And
Thank you.
that is a legacy that I think possibly surpasses any other legacy you could possibly want, is to bring history to light, bring truth to light. Uh,
Truth to light.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode of the Blacktor Studio.
Because my mom and dad met in Halifax, and I remember my dad. I have hundreds of cousins because my dad has 13 siblings, and
Good
I
for him.
remember. Yeah,
Good for his parents.
yeah. His poor mother. Whew. I remember being at a bar in Halifax, and a guy across the bar was like, "Where are you from, man?" I said, "Well, I'm from, here and there, and my dad's from New Brunswick. My mom is from Halifax." And he goes, "What's your name?" I said, Beau Dixon." He's like, "Yeah, you got a cousin. You got a cousin named Dewey." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure. My dad has lots of siblings." No, yeah, you got a cousin named Dewey Dixon." "Oh, yeah, Dewey." So this guy, this stranger at a bar, proceeds to tell me about my cousin Dewey Dixon, and how he was this badass, street fighting
Like you
dude.
must have looked like you or something.
A couple days later, "Dad, do I have a cousin named Dewey?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, we don't talk about Dewey." It's like, what the? And so I wrote this play based on this cousin that I never met, Dewey Dixon.